Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunnavari Paschatya Desatarine Namaste Saraswati Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Astoru Shishimata Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Astoru Shishimata Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Anantikoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Slari Ras Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Navadip Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. So, welcome Madhava Prabhu and his good wife, Radhika. Just recalling when I saw you this morning and I thought of the programs in Vrindavan and especially Chaupati, the Flower Festival, and it's really wonderful to have your association again. And also the first time I think you joined the Giriraj Maharaj in Drakensberg. That was an amazing kirtan and it just ran for such a long time, and we were dancing, and I was telling your father when I met him in Vrindavan about it at Govardhan. It was such an amazing kirtan. I'd like to get more of your association. Thank you. Yeah. So we're reading from today. We normally on a Saturday we read from the Hari Suri's diary, and it's we don't have the book, so I have to read from my computer a little bit, and we could discuss. And if you want to contribute at any time, please feel free to do so. So we're reading from February 8, 1976. For the first time since we arrived, Prabhupada gave a class after Guru Puja, speaking in English on the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, chapter 9, text 1. The subject was Prahlad Maharaj's prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. So I'll paraphrase here and there. After a brief discussion, Prabhupada asked one of his disciples, who was Subhak at that time, to come forward and repeat what he had said in the local language in Bengali, and for the benefit of the local devotees. But he was very nervous, especially, speaking in front of Prabhupada or doing something in front of Prabhupada. So he became a little flustered at the thought of speaking before Srila Prabhupada. And he couldn't get out, even just a mere couple sentences. And at some point his mind got blank and he couldn't remember anything what Prabhupada had said. So Prabhupada, he requested another devotee called, I think it was Nitai Chandadas, who was also from he was from Mayapur, to speak instead. And he did better. He was more successful. And so, naturally, people now were afraid because, especially those devotees who were bilingual, they were on their toes, because at any time they were wondering if Prabhupada would call them in the future to translate into the local language. So what we learned from that is that one, Srila Prabhupada was encouraging his disciples to speak. That was one thing. But the other point was he was also wanted to bring them to a higher level to get out of their nervousness. And the third point from that we learn is that to be attentive. And attentiveness is important when you chanting and when you hearing. You have to be very attentive, to come to a higher level. So this is what we learn. Is anybody want to add anything? Yeah? Okay. So then I'll just read a little more. The room on the roof was facing east, has been cleared out and prepared for Prabhupada. He went up just after taking his morning nap and stayed there until mid-afternoon. During the massage, Dayananda read the English translation and word for word translation of 2 prayers. Prabhupada wrote while on board the Jaluduta when he first sailed to America. The prayers were sent by Jai Sachinanda from Los Angeles, who has translated them into English from Bengali. Srila Prabhupada was pleased with the translations and suggested they be published in the new printing of the songbook for all devotees to learn and sing. One of them was already named Markina Bhagavata Dharma, and Prabhupada named the other the prayers to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So I was looking into these prayers, although it was not mentioned in Hari Suri's book. I mean, he didn't put the whole translation, but I was looking through it, and it's such valuable points or lessons that we can learn from the song itself, like I'll just touch on 1 or 2 of them. From the first one, the prayers to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and that was written on September 13, 1965, and the other one was written on the 18th of September 1965. So there's some days in between, and a few we could discuss. I emphatically say to you, O brothers, you will obtain good fortune from the Supreme Lord Krishna only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. And the next one is that Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is very dear to Lord Gauranga, the son of Mother Sachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He is that great saintly spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna at different places throughout the world. So you can see that, he definitely, Prabhupada had, Radharani's blessings, because his father would invite sadhus and would ask the sadhus to bless his son to become a devotee of Srimati Radharani. And then his spiritual master, his father was the first spiritual master. Then his own spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's offering prayers to him and honoring him. And in anybody's life, spiritual life, the spiritual master is important. When I read the Lilamrita, I remember reading it throughout the early hours of the morning. I was just reading it continuously. And 2 things that struck me was the passing away of his father was very emotional, and the second was the passing away of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And there's other parts. There's other, and it says, although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I am begging for your mercy, so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and the most experienced of all. So he's praying to Krishna because he wants to carry out the order of the spiritual master. Towards the end of the song, or more towards the end of that prayers that he wrote, "Oh dear friend, in your company I will experience great joy once again. In the early morning I'll wander about the covered pastures and fields, running and frolicking in many forests of Vraja. I will roll on the ground in spiritual ecstasy. Oh, when will that day be mine?" So it's very beautiful that Prabhupada was writing this, and some devotees were of the opinion that Prabhupada may be a coward boy. But that's not entirely correct, because that's as a coward boy in friendship especially will be a lower rasa, but we can understand that Srila Prabhupada is on the highest rasa. It's probably mentioned, I think it's mentioned in the Lilamrita like that. They were speculating into him being a coward boy, but he's giving the highest love. So he and a pure devotee or somebody in the category of Prabhupada must be on the highest level to give all rasas. So we can conclude that he's not that, but on a higher level. So then the second song, Markine Bhagavata Dharma, there was a few points that I thought was important. And Prabhupada quotes so many verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the 17th text to the 21st text, and so many nice points. When you analyze it from hearing, it takes you to realizing your spiritual position. Just by hearing you can realize it. And then he speaks about because he was English was not his language, and he's going to a country where they speak English. So he's saying, how will I make them understand the message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unqualified, unfortunate, unqualified, and most fallen. Therefore I am seeking your benediction, so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. So, his humility comes out here, that he was not considering himself, fortunate or qualified. And that's not an easy level, to be on. We always feel that we can do things and be very competent. But here we find Prabhupada, and the next verse he says, somehow or the other, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make a success or failure as you like. And then he says, O spiritual master of all the world, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. So, he knew that, he was, born Bengali, and although, we're not the body, but still, these, if we're born in a particular country, we have a particular accent, we have, we understand the language better. Even like one Srila Prabhupada was, he is one person, I think Sajivat Lal in Bombay. I was saying, you pronounce the word, pronounce the Sanskrit in like Bengali accent. He said, what can I do? I'm Bengali. What can I do? And sometimes he had a Scottish accent at times, and because he was in the Scottish school, and he picked that accent up also. So some words like Scottish, and yeah. So yeah, but anyway, he and sometimes the devotees couldn't understand him, like the pastime of Sham Sundar and Malati, and their first initiation. They were, they didn't know much about yagya, fire sacrifice, we have like, there was a plate with a disposable plate with a few bananas and some oranges, and they found it difficult, what Swamiji was saying. So when he told them to bow down and pay obeisances, they bowed down and they were blowing the fire out. So they were blowing the fire out, and they couldn't understand these things. And Prabhupada said, no, bow down, because he says it, bow down, And when time came to place the bananas in the fire, they started peeling it and eating it. He said, put in the fire. But they really didn't understand, So we can see that it was difficult for him, but still he was praying to Lord Krishna to improve his ability to penetrate their heart. And that's interesting. That's one of the things he was saying. Only by a causeless mercy will my words become pure. I'm sure that when the transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel and gladden, and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. So he says that. Therefore we pray to the deities that, that whatever message I'm giving, it should penetrate your heart, and then everything changes. So he prays like that. And he says, I have no knowledge, nor do I have no devotion, nor do I have knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. Signed, the most insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So he felt himself very insignificant, unfortunate, no devotion, no knowledge. And when they printed this in the Back to Godhead in the early years, which Giriraj Maharaj narrates, he said they were at a place, I don't know if Akash Ganga, one of the places the way in Bombay, and Jamuna read this prayer. She was reading this whole prayer, and when she came to this point where signed the most insignificant beggar, she, tears just rolled from her eyes. She burst and were just rolling, because, the way Prabhupada had written it and concluded as an insignificant beggar. Yeah, so she burst into tears. So then we'll read again, or we'll paraphrase. Prabhupada had very poor health at one point, and he was digestion was poor, and he even stopped taking some prasadam, and for breakfast he was just eating fruits and variety of vegetables, and for lunch he was eating variety of vegetables. Then he decided that he will have instead of taking milk, he would just take milk sweets like rasagullas and sandesh with gur. That is made down from boiled down sugar cane. Because he said that sugar would be good for his liver, and the solid milk will give him strength to work on his book. He was like, you diagnose himself and take the necessary preparation. And he said that as liquid milk is too difficult for him to digest. It's quite a little strange, by the way I found that, but that's why he made it into like sweets, and then it was quite, I couldn't reconcile that, but anyway, that's his reasoning. So it's difficult to digest. And milk, is a product that has to be served hot. And one incident where Prabhupada, somebody offered him milk, then he was drinking it, and then at some point he just left it because it got cold. So when milk turns cold, it's not very good, because milk helps to develop finer tissues of the brain. So like cold milk is cold milk for the drain and hot milk for the brain, because cold milk actually becomes urine. So it's for the drain, and hot milk is for the brain. So so health, we have to take care of our health, and sometimes devotees normally push themselves and do so much service, and then they break down. But we must take care of our health. And he was telling one of his disciples, she was unable to cook, and Prabhupada had put a sign in the kitchen: health is number 1, chanting is number 2, third one, service is number 3, but there's a fourth one. Then comes eating. It's in that order, but health is first. It's in that order. So Srila Prabhupada personally handwritten this, because when he noticed one devotee not taking care of herself, was Jadurani, she didn't take much care of her health. Then he was teaching, Prabhupada was teaching one of the disciples how to make rasagulla. So he personally taught all these, how to cook and how to do different activities. So we're reading from February 9th, 1976. On this morning walk, Prabhupada explained that Varnashram system is not necessary for our ISKCON society. It is a material arrangement. We hear different things about this. When one chants the holy name and performs devotional service, one immediately rises above that platform, like using a lift instead of stairs. However, as long as some bodily concept is present, Varnashram is useful and it can be utilized. So this is another point that lots of devotees they speak about another incident where Prabhupada hadn't completed his work. 50% of his work hasn't been completed, because he had stated that the other 50% was Varnashram Dharma. But here we see, it's like contradictory. But these things can be applied, Sri Radha Radhanath ki, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it can be applied, when necessary. Like if somebody has these abilities to do certain services, then we can utilize it and apply it, according to time, place, and circumstance. And the Varnashram system is there. It's a material arrangement, as stated in the Gita. What's the verse? 413, I think. Chaturvarnamaya system. Yeah. So but Prabhupada was having a discussion with one devotee, and he was saying him that how he was actually talking about Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, better known as Mahatma Gandhi. So he was talking how Gandhi wanted to establish this Varnashram throughout India. That was his plan. So he had presented this to, at that time, Nehru and others, and he wanted the villages to become self-sufficient in terms of their clothes, food, but he was betrayed by Nehru and another person, and they went ahead with the British plan that was to make factories and build huge factories and make people work. So the whole thing was spoilt. And Prabhupada was said he loved Gandhi because he really wanted the best for India. And and Prabhupada was like kind of emotional because the British has really spoilt India, and he had this idea. So one morning walk, when Srila Prabhupada was walking, he took a long walk on the beach, and towards the end there was a statue of Gandhi, and Prabhupada paid his respects to Gandhi. His pranams. He normally wouldn't walk that long, and the devotee Bhagavad Prabhu was with him. But as he was coming back, some people, some of Gandhi's followers, they started talking and praising him. And then Prabhupada said, Gandhi destroyed the Gita. Completely. So he appreciated him for, his efforts. But when he came to the Gita, he said, Gandhi said that Gandhi destroyed the Gita. Gandhi said this, Gandhi said that. He made all mistakes. And then Prabhupada was going on and on criticizing Gandhi's translation of the Gita and his different ideas and concepts. Then after he finished saying all this thing, he turned and he looked at Bhagavad Prabhu and he smiled. But he appreciated him accordingly for his efforts in certain areas. And we can learn from that. Sometimes some devotees may be, maybe more competent in a particular area, so we can appreciate that. And they may not be competent on other things. So it's a quality that we can learn from Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. So then Prabhupada starts speaking in general about various aspects of the Vedic social system, how his mother was married at 8 years old, and he gave other example, people who were married young as 5 years old. But the couples would live separately, and then when they reach puberty, then they unite. And he gave his own example of his own wife. He married at 11, and at the age of 13 she moved with the family, and at 14 she gave birth. It's like quite soon. So he was talking about this system of marriage, and how concerned the father is about the child's marriage, the daughter's marriage. And Prabhupada quotes something, I'll just read it, but I found this. He said that the social system for getting girls married was so strict that in one sastra it says, if a girl is not married by the first menstrual period, then the father has to eat the menstrual liquid. Everyone winced at the thought. Prabhupada explained that of course that is not to be taken literally, but it was meant to stress the importance of properly protecting the girls. By marrying the girls before puberty, they would naturally become attached to their husbands and remain faithful throughout their lives. Thus their chastity was preserved and there was no disturbance in society. Prabhupada said that our ISKCON society, however, getting married is not so important. For those who don't want to get married, it's not so important. That's because life becomes perfect by serving Krishna. He is the real husband. So it's also there. So chastity also, not specifically in marriage, but chastity to the scriptures and the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. We should become chaste to the teachings of the Acharya. That's also there. We can't add or subtract, Just like sometimes when we have Guru Puja and we're reciting the English translation of the Guru Vandana, the song, and we say, we normally, some of us say that we take shelter of your divine lotus feet. But that's not in the translation, in the actual song. But that's an addition. So one has to be cautious in adding words in the songs of the Acharyas or the translation. We have to become chaste to the teachings also. Yeah. So Varnashram system is important, as we discussed, as we learned from the Gita, that if Varnashram is destroyed, or then as Prabhupada put in one of his purports, on the failure of such Varnashram dharma, naturally the woman become free to act and mix with men, and thus adultery is indulged in at the risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. And in a purport, Prabhupada says the training of the boy is brahmachari and the training of the girl is chastity. There's so much things you could say about it. I just want to skip because we may not have much time. So then Prabhupada receives the mail. A letter came from Brahmananda Swami. It was a long, rather depressing missive. It was a very depressing letter. And then they were talking about in Nairobi, the devotees went to collect. Navayogendra Swami, Navayogendra at that time, Nandakumar, they were Swamis. So they were having problem with relationships with the members because the members, they couldn't secure so much of collections. And that's another thing, sometimes we just go with that intention of just getting money from people. And our main objective is to make them conscious of Krishna. Because some people think that if I bring a lot of money to my spiritual master, he'll be pleased. But that's not what pleases the spiritual master. The spiritual master is pleased by the advancement of the disciple. That's what pleases the spiritual master. And Prabhupada writes that in the purport of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So they went out and they were finding it difficult to accumulate money or donations. And then he said that some of the local devotees from Mombasa, they visited the local prostitutes after leaving the temple. So it kind of like tarnished the image of the society. And in the community, they became apprehensive to give donations. So we have to be very, very careful, in practicing Krishna consciousness, that we don't, fall prey to these things. We deviate from the process. And that happens, it happened to so many devotees, even here and elsewhere. Devotees went to the casinos to collect, to gamble and bring money. So, the one person left, and I met him some years back, and now he's a Muslim, follows Islam. He lived in the temple here, so, we can just deviate at any time. The other person is living in America, but he's practicing, But still, they managed to collect some and clear the debt of the BBT. So then there was another Swami, Chaivana Swami. He was in charge of the African Yatra in Brahmananda's absence. So he left and he went away to Florida. He just left and he went away to Florida. And then he sent a letter to the White House telling them our movement could stop the spread of communism in Africa if they gave us backing. So this was not very appreciated by Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada wasn't impressed, because now you are dealing with politics. You're getting into the political arena. And we have to be careful about that. That also, engaging with politicians. Like even Srila Prabhupada himself, didn't want to meet the Prime Minister of India. He sent Giriraj Maharaj and Tamal Krishna Maharaj to meet. Because he was Indian and he should have known, the etiquette was he has to come and meet the sadhu. So Prabhupada didn't go. That's the etiquette. So anyway, he had written to the White House how we can stop spreading communism, so that it became like a political, and Prabhupada was not impressed with them. The danger of, like we had even here in South Africa, we had a program in 1975, 20 years, 1975, I think it was 75, yeah. 1975 Prabhupada came. 1995 we had a program at the Durban City Hall where Prabhupada had come. And we invited many politicians, many politicians, and they came. Many leaders came and they spoke. But the concentration was on the politicians. But Srila Prabhupada was left in a kitchen. And myself and another devotee, we thought, well, what, we're going to listen to them. Let's be with Prabhupada. Because you can't just leave the deity and just go away, because somebody has to be with the deity. With Prabhupada. So we were with Prabhupada. And then when Prabhupada came in 1975, they were just throwing flowers on him, from the gallery, from the top. So the same thing we did in 1995 when we took the murti. Then myself, this devotee, when the time came, we carried Prabhupada and put him on the stage, on his Vyasasan. And the flowers were raining. It was such a beautiful feeling that as Prabhupada, we were taking Prabhupada. But also in my mind, I was just thinking that we were more concentrating on the politicians. And that's the danger. And unfortunately, it was, that one of our devotees also got attached to political, one of our leaders, And later, well, subsequently, he is late now, but that happened also. So we have to be very cautious in dealing with politicians. So therefore Prabhupada didn't give him permission, and it's good to get permission to do things. It's like, especially when you're serving the spiritual master, like when we serve Giriraj Maharaj, we can't move anything from the place where he kept it. Because he knows where he left what. Exactly knows. So detailed, right, Madhava? You know how detailed he is. Giriraj Maharaj is like very pakka and detailed and like Prabhupada chastised one disciple, he said you shouldn't move the pen from this point to that point. So we get permission. And getting permission is like the potency is also given to do things. With the, when you get permission, you get the potency also follows. But if you just do it yourself, you just, it's not that you take every cough to the doctor, you have to use your intelligence also. But you have to know, what the spiritual master wants and doesn't want. So this is one of the things the disciple slipped and got involved in another arena. Then another devotee, another person, Tarun Kanti Ghosh, Sri Tarun Kanti Ghosh came to meet Srila Prabhupada, but he was the home minister. He was also a politician. But he was a good humored person, humorous and he had a very high ranking in the political arena. But he came from a Vaishnava family and he worshipped Lord Chaitanya. So Prabhupada gave him a lot of time and they relished prasadam. See the difference, dealing with politicians. And this person is a politician, but Prabhupada had a nice relationship and received him very well and served him well, and he left paying great tribute to Srila Prabhupada for spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So So then Harisuru writes the 10th of 1976, and Srila Prabhupada is meditating on the development of ISKCON, and then how he would discuss with his disciples how to manage the society. He was teaching them, but there's also mismanagement, and he would rectify things. So in one instance he called for Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he said, I'll just read a little bit. Early this morning before his walk, he sent me to get Tamal Krishna Maharaj. That's Hari Suri. After some discussion, he authorized him to send out the following letter to all the temples and GBCs. This morning, Srila Prabhupada called me in his room. I quote, he was concerned over the appropriation of money for use in traveling and communicating between centers by their devotees. And Srila Prabhupada was concerned, this was one of his concerns, and the other concern was, at that time, to make calls, you have to book a call, you make trunk calls. So you have to book a call. So he was very unhappy that the devotees were traveling by flights, and it was very expensive. And they were making many, many calls. So he said, no one should take plane flights. Everyone should travel by train. And if you travel in India by train, I guess you may have traveled, but it's quite something. We traveled a lot in our February in the trains with Giriraj Maharaj, and it's quite taxing, yeah. And but anyway, he said you travel by trains, no more trunk calls, and if anyone has to go to another temple, he should book a train reservation, but he cannot take a plane. With regards to trunk calls, His Divine Grace does not want any more trunk call booked except in case of emergency. Everything should be done by mail. Telegrams should be utilized only when absolutely necessary. Telegrams, you type this side, it comes out that side. It's like a... Oh, telegrams is like postage, but telex too. Not to utilize it because they were expensive, and he was very concerned about wastage, money, especially money. And he said, the Western disease is that the Westerners, they waste a lot of money. They just buy things and put new things, and I've seen this quite frequently. Even in India, when we go, they're buying for the gurus, they'll buy all new things and throw the old things away, and that's not what we're meant to do. We must utilize everything properly in Krishna service. That's what Prabhupada wanted. But at times he would give money. It's not that he was not like, he was like miserly. And there's one instance that where Mother Vishaka narrates that when she went out with a small group on a morning walk with Prabhupada, so when they on the way back, after they were returning, then beggars are there, and a woman was carrying a child, surrounded by a few children, and she came to the car and begged, and Prabhupada gave a few pies to the woman and to each child. So Vishaka said she had some doubt, because in the Gita it says charity is given to an unworthy person is in the mode of ignorance. But she had the audacity to ask Srila Prabhupada. She said, why are you giving Krishna's money to beggars? She told him, why are you giving Krishna's money to beggars? And Prabhupada, he didn't say anything. Immediately he was silent, and she was also became silent, and she realized that she may be offensive. And then she had this realization that, and I'll read it. I said, it is because it is prasadam. He gravely said, yes, of course, paisa coming from Prabhupada's hand, from the hand of a pure devotee, may be in a different category than pies coming from someone else's hand, but nonetheless, it was a wonderfully instructive moment. So I read this a while ago, then I was thinking that last night I just made those points, that yes, The pure devotee will give. But we may not know the mind of a pure devotee, how he is looking at it. Because if you give them the money, they will appreciate the sadhu. And that appreciation to the sadhu is their spiritual advancement, their Krishna consciousness. That's how I have to look at it. Is that okay? Then Prabhupada was talking about, 10 hands and 2 hands. Because Krishna is everywhere in all directions. And he has so many hands. And then he quoted his father. So my father used to say, when Krishna takes your money or possession in 10 hands, how can you protect it with your 2 hands? And when he gives you in 10 hands, how much can you take in your 2 hands? So he was talking about that, and he was talking about his early life, his Guru Maharaj, and then he was talking about his father, which we mentioned earlier, would invite sadhus and ask for blessings, so that he could become a devotee of Radharani. So the devotees always were inspired by this intimate dealings, or when Prabhupada spoke about his childhood, they were very happy. And his father didn't discriminate between, whether a person was a sadhu or not, because they would smoke also ganja, like they would take, it's, I don't know, it's legalized or something? Legalized? Yes. It reminds me of Peter Tosh or something, legalize it or something, but anyway, that was about Dhaka, yeah. And his father would just, give them money and prasadam, but he was not like very impressed with these type of sadhus. And therefore he discriminated with who's a sadhu and who's not a sadhu. And he was very vocal about these people who were smoking, whether they were saintly, but his father didn't discriminate. But Prabhupada said that this was picked up by Western people in India, from the sadhus, and that's how it came to the West, by Allen Ginsberg. It was picked up in India by the Westerners, and that's how it came into the West. And then he said about his own spiritual master taught him that, that any type of intoxication is bad. We must not take any type of intoxication. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was very strict. Prabhupada didn't want to say this, but he said it, so I'll just read it. He revealed that as a lifelong celibate, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was so strict that sometimes he would criticize his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for having married twice. If there was some fight between them, he would tell Bhaktivinoda, Sri Sangi, you are attached to women. Of course, this was transcendental, Prabhupada said, and but they had a special relationship. Like, the son could tell the father that, but when I heard this in that lecture, it was like, the way Prabhupada was like hesitant to say it, but he said, it's not for everybody, But yes, so yeah. And Bhaktisiddhanta was such an outspoken person, and you may have heard that, they wanted him to be killed, and the Goswamis, and they wanted to give a 25,000 rand bribe to the police, but the police said, no, we can't do that, we can't kill a sadhu. And they came and told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So oh yeah, this is interesting. At one point in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, during the Gaudiya Math's annual Parikram tour of the Vrindavan area, At that time, Prabhupada had taken a seat on the same couch as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was thinking that he is a respectable gentleman and I am also a respectable gentleman. So Prabhupada could not understand that there would be anything wrong if he sat on the same seat. When he noticed that everyone else was sitting on the ground, how he understood and got down. It's quite interesting. But Bhaktisiddhanta never cautioned him about it, but encouraged him to preach. And Bhaktisiddhanta noted at that time his eagerness to hear. And hearing is very important. We must come and hear the Bhagavatam. Sometimes we ask, who's giving the class? Oh, so and so. Okay, you'll just stay away. But we come to hear, we don't worry about the machine. We worry about the sound coming out of the machine. It's like the sound is more important. It's my energy, my separated energy. We're not worrying about the microphone so much, but the sound. The sound is important. So sometimes we give more importance to the machine who's speaking. So hearing is very important. And that's what actually helps one to advance in Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada spoke from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 7th canto, again, the 9th chapter, text number 3, about Prahlad Maharaj. And he was saying, explained that although Prahlad Maharaj was an experienced young boy, nevertheless the demigods, being unable to pacify Lord Nishingadev, asked him to go forward and speak. Go forward to speak. And he did. But he sat at the feet of Lord Nishingadev and he felt completely protected. And Prabhupada here was stressing the quality of becoming humble. And humility is an important criteria in advancement of Krishna consciousness. We were speaking about it last night, myself, Krishna Chaitanya, in a program that we went to last night. We were speaking about humility. And that humbleness it's quite an advanced stage also. Just like if somebody is humble, then they can constantly chant the holy name, right? What's the third verse in the Shishya Sastikam? Chinadapi Suni Chaina. Yes. That we can, constantly Tarorapi Sahishnena, Aminina Manadena, Kirtanya Sadahari. So one should chant the holy name constantly in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So if we, that's in the Sastikam, that's considered to be this, this humility. This is like the third stage from Shraddha to Prema. The third stage. And then we develop humility, and as we develop more and more humility, we'll become closer to Krishna. You'll chant more, you'll become more closer to Krishna. And that's where it concludes. There's another small part to it. I think I just kind of, left it out. Yeah. Then he meets Bhavananda Maharaj. And Bhavananda Maharaj came to see Prabhupada, so that he wanted to join a boat party because he was feeling strained from the burden of management, because to manage an ISKCON and not so easy. You have so much challenges. If you did some management, I don't know, many people here seated here did management work. If you did some management, you can really, it's really demanding. And he said he wanted to go into the villages and speak to the Bengali people. And Prabhupada said, you don't know the local language. Then he said, well, I have a white body, I can dance and chant. And they'll be attracted. So Prabhupada said, oh yes, okay, it's a good idea, and then he left immediately. So that way we end of today's discussion. It's 8:32. If anybody like to make some comments or the microphone. You say anything? Anybody want to say anything? There's a microphone there. You can speak in the mic because people are watching it, so you can hear it. Yeah, you like to make a comment? Okay, you can give it to her.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your class. It was very inspiring and enlivening to hear about Prabhupada so much. There's one little thing I wanted to mention about the differences of rasas that you mentioned, that Prabhupada must be on the highest rasa to be able to give. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he made some statements that only 3 people could understand. Him, Radharani, and Madhavendra Puri.
Yeah.
And the reason that Madhavendra Puri could understand that is because he understood the purport of that statement. So, when we hear who Madhavendra Puri is in Krishna Leela, it's actually quite shocking. Because when Radha and Krishna go in the Kunj, not even the sunlight can penetrate, not even air. So nobody knows what goes on in the Kunjas.
Yeah.
Because the trees, they intertwine so much, and all the branches and all that, they make it completely secret and intimate. And the reason why Madhavendra Puri could understand that intimacy between Radha and Krishna is because he is the root of all Kalpavriksha trees.
Yeah, in the spiritual world, he is a Kalpavriksha tree.
He's a Kalpavriksha, which is not the highest rasa.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I would say on my level, I wouldn't mention anything. I would say, Prabhupada, was he coward boy? Was he on the highest? I don't know. What does it change for me, really? I have a process that I have to go through. It's most important. Why am I saying that? Because also, at the end, when Prabhupada was very sick, he was drooling. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who's my Gurudev, he writes in his diary that Prabhupada, the devotees are saying, this is your ecstatic symptoms. Because he's comparing it to when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have ecstatic symptoms, his body would become like a pumpkin, he would drool and different things would happen, his limbs would elongate. And Prabhupada said, oh, this is dangerous. We should not talk like that. This is sahaja. So, I have also read in Sarata Darshini by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It's a bit of a radical statement. He says, it's an offense to call anybody a pure devotee. Not because the person might not be a pure devotee, because it establishes myself as a pure devotee. Unless I know, how can I say? And Prabhupada says, we do not make like random statements. We speak what we mean, what we know. So, please forgive me if I...
Well, yeah. I'm familiar with Madhavendra Puri's pastimes and the statements that you are making. That's what you said is correct. And but just like many people feel that Prabhupada, especially here in South Africa, some people left the movement on the basis of thinking that Prabhupada didn't give everything. That's why I mentioned that, because then they left to join other societies. Quite a lot of them, quite a few of them actually, quite a lot of them joined. Some were my friends also. So they would always quote, like one of them came and said, but they joined Narayan Maharaj, with no disrespect. He's a pure devotee or whatever. And then he told me that, it's the same thing. So I said, okay, if it's the same thing, then why you left ISKCON? So, our loyalty is to ISKCON. I mean, that's with all of us, I would assume. So therefore I mention it like that, because if you say, like, if it's his relationship is in friendship, then means he's not on the highest level of conjugal love. So for our understanding that he gave everything to us, because he said everything in his books, and we can come to that level. That's why I mentioned that. That's one. And the idea, the thought of pure devotees, Prabhupada had different definitions of what a pure devotee is himself. He said if one follows the orders of the spiritual master, follow the four regulative principle, is considered a pure devotee. And another time he was asked, and then he said, well, somebody asked him how many pure devotees are in ISKCON. How many pure devotees are there in the society? And he said, he wanted to know that how many devotees are in ISKCON, that all the devotees in ISKCON is considered pure devotees. That's how he looked at it. There's different ways of looking at a pure devotee, and different acharyas have different realizations also. And so I look at things a little differently, and being chased to the teachings of Prabhupada, I saw it that way. So please forgive me, I saw it that way. Thank you very much for your... This is what is important when we have discussions like this. And thank you very much, Mataji. Madhava, you say that?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. You mentioned about Prabhupada saying that we should chant mantras that are according to our acharyas. We can see, nowadays, there's a lot of, mantras that are being invented. So this is very dangerous, because when we get these mantras from the acharyas, it's coming down from a line, then we are empowered to sing these mantras. Then the mantras have effect. But if we just concocting some mantras, we don't have the blessings of the acharyas. So that's a very nice point, that came up.
Yeah.
So we should be very careful of.
Yes. So that's see, I notice you just like chanting Hare Krishna all the time, and just purely just chanting Hare Krishna. Especially when we were in Chaupati, that program you were singing, I was just like lost myself, man. It's really so beautiful. I was telling you, your father was very ill, and I got a message that he was very ill, so I phoned there. I ran out from the room here, and I had to phone your sister, and I was telling your father how beautiful the chanting was in Chaupati. It was very wonderful, but he couldn't speak, at that point. Yeah. Anyway, you was going to say something. Yeah. So we'll just take one more.
I can remember when we were in Namibia, distributing books, and there was a lady that came up to us. She said she hasn't eaten for a few days. She was a white lady. She was actually begging. And we didn't have any of our personal Lakshmi, we only had the book Lakshmi. But looking into our eyes, we actually felt very, painful. We didn't even have food for ourselves at that time, but we actually took 50 rand. We asked her to go and buy, something to eat, bread. She said she wants bread. So I was just remembering that when you mentioned that Prabhupada gave Lakshmi to a street person.
So Krishna Chaitanya is saying that we were together in Namibia, we were preaching because it's a strong Christian country. And both of us went there, and there's no temples, there's nothing. We just went there backpacking and just moving around and preaching, and didn't have a place to stay. And yeah, we met this lady, and I recall that lady. She was like, just like, if you look into her eyes, she was like so sad that, and hungry, and you can just look at her and you could feel it, And he the one suggested that we should give her something. And then we just took out some money and we gave it to her. It was very wonderful. And we'll be going back there shortly, I think. Yeah. We registered our society there, but we don't have a center there. We're trying to start something there. I don't know how successful we'll be. We seek your blessings also. It's not very far from South Africa. It's like 2 hours, some 2.5 hours from Johannesburg. So it's a very wonderful country, and we preached to a lot of people. We were dealing with lots of atheistic people, lots of scholars, but Krishna Chaitanya is such a brilliant preacher. Such a brilliant preacher. He was preaching to one person, and in such a nice way, and that person, there was another person who was hearing the conversation from a little distance of what he was saying. So the next day we were walking up, and the guy ran out from the room and ran to him to get the book. That guy, that was yeah? That guy. He came for the book. So he took the book and asked him, "What do you do?" He reckon, "I'm a doctor." I just walked down they all were highly qualified people. We just walked down the road. I met a person who was doing his PhD in something, and he said, "He'll take a book." And we just we're meeting different types of people. But what was interesting with talking about the chanting of Hare Krishna, because we didn't have no venue, so we were below a parliament building. Where the parliament is, we were in the bottom. We were having our program there in the ground. At the parliament building, and we were just in the bottom. Not very far, just like few minutes we're there. And we were chanting Hare Krishna, and the sound went to a distance. It was like one lady came running, German lady came running and said, "Can I join you all?" A German lady, huh? She came, she said, "Can I join you all?" And she said, "Yes, you can join us." And she said, "I'm a vegetarian." I said, "Wow, it's amazing. We got an international, we got an Italian there, it's vegetarian, we got a German, then we had others, we had somebody from Mauritius. I preached the day before, one Mauritian man, he came. It was just really amazing. So we'll seek your blessings when we go back to encourage these people. So we'll conclude here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.